Morning, coaches. Welcome to Daily Locker Room's podcast. We've got Ryan and Daniel back this week, lads. Busy weekend of football. We've just heard the draw as well. We're gonna talk about the draw in a bit. Obviously the weekend past was the first significant knockout weekend of football, lads. No better place to start than obviously Castlebar. I think there was 12,000 people in Castlebar on Saturday, and an enthralling encounter that went the whole way to penalties. And I suppose it was fitting that that Derry obviously won the game on penalties in the same manner as they did in the National League final and the Ulster final last year. And I suppose that experience, Ryan, of having gone down the stretch and having played in those games, and maybe they just went back and reverted the type. I thought from an offensive point of view as well, Ryan. I thought Derry were much more secure, and I think Daniel will come to you in a second. You did call it last week that Mayo would struggle against that, but Ryan, certainly a massive win for Derry. Massive.
Yeah, definitely, Stephen. It feels like now Derry are back in the mix again. We've just heard obviously they're playing Kerry next week, so look, the task gets bigger. But that was a massive win. Obviously a lot of people were talking very highly of Mayo, and rightly so, the week before because they went toe to toe with Dublin. But it just goes to show you, Mayo should have been probably top in that group, and now they're out of the championship. Derry took the sting out of the game to an extent. They controlled the ball. They were very patient in building attacks. I'm even thinking of the last score in normal time with it 30 seconds. Sam Callanan was straight through to fist it over, make it a 2-point game. Unfortunately for Mayo, he put it wide. Derry built it the whole way up the pitch. Glass, fair enough, takes a shot, comes off the post, but Chrissy McCaig, it's just typical of the way Derry play. They fill the shape to get depth. McCaig's up there for the rebound, receives it, fisted over the bar. And it just felt at that stage then Derry had a wee bit more momentum. Now, I know it went the whole way to penalties, but it silenced the crowd a wee bit. So look, a lot of big performances. McKilness seemed back to himself. Lachlan Murray, who couldn't get a kick for Derry under Rory Gallagher, seems to have really found a lot of form. He scored 5 points. So look, Derry will be dangerous. They'll relish the challenge against Kerry, and yeah, unfortunately Mayo haven't even made it to Croke Park this year.
Yeah, it's a massive game, lads. Like, it's going to be really difficult. Obviously, it's a difficult game for Kerry coming, but it's going to be really difficult for Derry as well. Like, a lot of motion there, probably, lads, on Saturday past. The game haven't gone to penalties. Like, this week will be all about recovery. It'll be about looking at Kerry. They'll know Kerry obviously very well from having played them last year in the semi-final. But from a Derry perspective, Daniel, like the confidence that they'll gain from Saturday night, like, nothing beats winning. And I know that technically they didn't win the game in normal time, but they've gone now to Newry. They've dug out a really, ugly win against Westmeath. They've gone to Castlebar, which is a difficult place to go. As Ryan rightly said, Mayo were kicking the ball away from obviously top in the group. Mayo actually haven't lost. I think they've only lost one championship game, and that was to Galway by a single point. And this win, Daniel, it can't be underestimated for spirit, for togetherness, for momentum. You've seen Conor Doherty's celebrations as well at the end. There was a real unified sort of aggression of, like, fuck you sort of thing, like, to the media and the pundits. Like, but what will this win have done for Derry then?
Very important, probably just for themselves, I'd say, because there's no doubt that probably the skeletons in the closet seem to be coming back fairly quick, like, but look, to be honest, I actually, even though they controlled the game for large parts and they controlled tempo for large parts, I still didn't think they were great. I think they still looked really tentative. I was kind of, I think you'd be pleased with their first half. I think their first half was decent, but second half, I think they went back a little bit to kind of turnovers and a little bit of loose play. I still don't think they're at their best. I think the Mayo of 7 or 8 weeks ago would have probably given that, or sorry, the Derry of 7 or 8 weeks ago would have been a lot more comfortable in that game. What you have to say, psychologically, it was a massive thing, and I heard Conor McCluskey talking about it afterwards. He was saying we went back to basics a bit, and from the coaching aspect, like, I mean, sometimes you kind of forget what you're good at, and Derry were built on, firstly, under Rory Gallagher, is probably solid defence, and they went back to that a little bit. And Eamon Fitzmaurice did a piece last night, some people mightn't like or whatever, but there was about how they fouled when they were on turnover ball. They got numbers back and scrambled defence an awful lot quicker. Bits and pieces like that, and that's all just attitude change. That's not anything majorly structured. That's attitude change. Orleans probably didn't press as high. I was amazed Mayo didn't try a couple more long kickouts. Like, I mean, that has been Derry's kryptonite all year. Mayo consistently went short, and you know, I question that. They went long for one. Jordan Flynn won it, and they got a free brought up to the 45. Like, I don't know why Mayo didn't pinch that a bit more. But look, you've seen a narrative this week in general about teams saying, well, why didn't Mayo play as well as they did against Dublin last week? Or why didn't Cork play as well as they played against Tyrone the week before? Like, all of these teams, when they play each other, different teams don't suit each other a lot of the time. Like, I mean, Galway and Mayo, or Galway and Monaghan, let's say, for example, you look back over the league meetings and over the last couple of years, that match is always a dogfight because both teams play slow transition football. They like to control tempo. You look at Cork Louth, we said it here last week, that was always going to be two teams mirroring each other, nervous about getting into a quarter final. And then Mayo and Derry, like, Mayo can't live without emotional energy. If Mayo don't have emotional energy, they have nothing. Like, you could see in the first half, like, they are inept at breaking down any kind of a blanket. And it wasn't an overly nuanced Derry blanket. Yes, they had a bit of aggression, but Christ above, like, what did they have? 3 shots from play in the first half in general? I mean, that's just not good enough, you know. And I think the one little inkling I give for Derry next week, right, is that Kerry have had no test since probably, call a spade Cork in that first round Munster, quarter final in Munster. And the way Derry play doesn't require as much emotional energy as, let's say, a Mayo, because they will be quite happy for slow phases of play and slow transitions. They don't go man-to-man high up the field. They will be able to conserve a certain amount of energy. Now, will it be enough or not? I don't know. But I think overall, Derry it was good, and mentally it was a big win, but it was more so I'd have been disappointed with Mayo. Like, given the fact they knew what was coming, they looked really like they couldn't break it down in the first half at all.
Yeah, and some interesting comments there, Daniel. Like, you know, stick to what you're good at, Ryan. Like, that's something that sort of really amazes me at times, because, like, you look at Tyrone at the weekend. I know we're going to talk about Tyrone and Roscommon in a minute, like, but Tyrone just seemed to, like, lack an identity, when we know that, you know, Tyrone are really at their best when they're sitting deep, when they're aggressive, when they're turning ball over. But you could see the aggression. Even, I think there was a turnover in the first half, Ryan, with Conor Glass. You know, and the real level of, like, yes, you know, the fist was pumping. There was a real blood flow in Derry's performance, and that's what Derry were synonymous with last year. You know, even that semi-final against Kerry, the aggression, the drive, the defensive, what you probably call the defensive intensity that they brought to the game, was second to none. Whereas we hadn't been seeing that, Ryan, over the last number of games. Like, so, you know, that will have obviously pleased Mickey Hart. But then, you know, listening to what Daniel talked about there, I think the Sunday game might have mentioned it, or someone I heard over the weekend saying, like, that was all down to the group. But it can't just all be down to the group. Like, there's got to be an element of motivation from the top as well. Like, and I would say that Mickey had to call upon all his experience, Ryan, over the last number of weeks to really galvanise that group and pull them together for Saturday night.
Yeah, you would have thought so, Stephen. Mickey has obviously been in a few tricky places throughout his managerial career. And the one thing I would say, though, there is a lot of leaders in that Derry group as well. You know, we're talking about boys that have won All Irelands with their club, that just won a National League title this year as well. Like Conor Glass, as you said, tremendous leader. So the way Derry were coming, they got the job done against Westmeath, but we were all expecting that. So I don't think that gave them a massive lift. All of a sudden, the draw, a lot of people talking about Mayo, as we mentioned, after going toe-to-toe with Dublin. They got Mayo and Castlebar. And I've no doubt then, maybe on the Tuesday night, the leaders within that Derry squad said, look, lads, this is the spark, this is the draw. We're going to go down there and we're going to just turn our season around. Because Castlebar is such a tricky place to get a win. The other, on the flip side of that, Mayo were coming down. Like, they should have won that bloody game against Dublin. They were on the way down. It was probably very hard for Kevin McStay and them lads to lift the boys to get them up again for another massive game against Derry. So I feel sorry for Mayo in one sense, because they lack consistency. If you go and play them toe to toe, then they're going to look very good. As Dan says, they play in a lot of energy and a lot of turnovers, and that's the style they want to play. But the Derry game, Derry just looked like they weren't going to lose. They were refusing to give in, and yeah, I know it went the whole way to penalties, but you have to give a lot of credit to Derry, because they were in a tricky place and they've found a way now to get through to a quarter final. And look, I would give them a 50-50 shot. You're just on mute.
It's interesting. Sorry, lads. It's interesting, lads. You know, we talk about Derry a lot, but we've got to mention Mayo, lads. Like, and you know, the funny thing is, like, you listen to Lee Keegan last night, and he talked about it. He wasn't, you know, the Mayo public's probably not happy that we didn't bring enough energy in the first half, and you know, we didn't have a go. And you hear these talks about having a go, and you just sort of think to yourself, like, that's the problem. Like, you know, that they can only really play that one way. as you said, they need that chaos, they need that mayhem. And what really, when you look back on that season from Mayo, like the likes of Donny Buckley, Stephen Rochford, this real illustrious management team that was brought in at the start, everyone, wow, the wow factor. Like, and, you know, Rochford had 3 years in Donegal, like, and things didn't go that well, you know, and you're sort of looking and you're sort of thinking to yourself, like, a lot of these boys in the background of setups, I think, you know, do tend to get a free ride, whereas the likes of McStay, he's the front figure of it, he's going to get all the heat, he's going to get all the criticism. But, like, from a coaching perspective, like, how can you not see out those big games, like, you know, and how can you make the same mistakes over and over and over and over again, like from a coaching point of view, like that has to be addressed, Daniel. Like, I think Armagh, I think over the last number of years, their big issue was game management. Maybe 5-6 years ago was game management. They have addressed that. You know, you can actually see Armagh late in games when the heat's on, when the fucking clutch moments come. They have that set play. They have that control. Hand goes up. Like McStay roaring people back last week, drop off the kick out, and players overruling them and saying press the kick out. That's madness. Like that has to come from coaching. Like, it has to, Daniel.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I think Mayo are kind of fucked if they do or fucked if they don't here, because I think if they tried to play with any kind of composure and like, they would never have been able to play the way Derry played in the first half. It's not in the players, it's not in the DNA. I don't think the coaches want to play that way. So it's just not going to happen. And if they do play that way, they're not particularly good at it. So like, they have no option really but to play with that kind of energy and emotion and all the rest of it. But like, as you say, from a coaching point of view, you look at that Derry game. Derry relies, like, if you go man to man with that Derry team, like, because Oren Lynch comes out so consistently, you're consistently underloaded defensively. So let's say, yes, everyone mans up and everyone's manned up for Mayo. All that takes is Oren Lynch to come, someone to come to him, and then an overlap is domino effect the whole way down the field. Like, if from a Mayo point of view, if you didn't see that, if you're doing your video analysis and you don't see that Derry have Lynch to be the plus one consistently, which creates the overlap, and you have to say to yourself, well, we need to condense the field back into 65 back, I think that's really poor coaching. And like, to be fair to them, it was a miracle they were in the game still, to be perfectly honest. Like, they had to win some outrageous one-on-one turnovers high up the field to get themselves back into the game. And that burns up so much energy when you're pressing that high and you have to work so hard just for one turnover. That burns up so much fuel. So when you come to the last 5-6 minutes, I think the decision making drops off a cliff from Mayo, because they have worked so hard. And I don't seem like I'm criticizing them, because I think there's a massive genuine effort from players here, but they're working inefficiently as far as I'm concerned. Like, Derry defended really efficiently. They didn't waste any energy high up the field. They got back, they worked in little groups, and they hunted as a pack. That's conserving energy. Like, you look at that last score from Derry. I mean, that takes so much composure. That takes real clarity of thought and clarity of thinking. Like, you compare that to the chance that Tommy Conroy had with a few minutes to go, where he bursts through the middle, massive energy to get from the outside to in, and pulls off a shot as high as he can from top of the D and drives it 40 yards wide. A total lack of composure. But again, I put an awful lot of that down to fatigue errors, you know. So I just think Mayo are really inefficient in how they play, because it warrants so much energy to get themselves in games. And same with the Dublin game, they expel so much energy working hard. I think Mayo could do with working a bit smarter, but I caveat that by saying it doesn't seem to be in the DNA of those players. They don't seem to be able to control games and play at a calm tempo. It just doesn't suit them.
Yeah, and Ryan, what is your take on that Mayo group? Like the players, like, there's certain serious talent. Like, they've got unbelievable athleticism. You know, for me, they're up there from a conditioning point of view. Ryan, Mayo have always been a team that I have looked at from a conditioning point of view and thought, right, they're at the top table from a conditioning perspective. You know, there's no question about it. All those players, there's fantastic running power there. I think someone had said to me, you know, that they felt, I can't remember who it was, a coach said to me one day he felt that Mayo had one of the, I know this sounds a bit silly, but one of the best lower body running powers in the you know, in the country. Like, and I know exactly what he meant, like, you know, that real aggressive running power when they're in full flight, like, but something fundamentally is wrong. Like, something is wrong, Ryan, you know.
Yeah, look, Stephen, I think Mayo are they've got plan A, which is real chaotic, go man to man, as Dan talks about, lots of energy, high pressing from their forwards. But I think they're not the best at changing the way that they play. And what I mean by that is, if you look at Dublin can play you a number of different ways. If you set up a low block, they'll find a way of cutting through you. In their forward division, they've got a lot of players that can be an attacking threat. While for me, I think Mayo are too reliant in the moment on Ryan O'Donoghue. They've loads of pace and power coming from deep, but at the end of the day, it's the boys up top that have got to be the finishers. And I just feel that's the difference between them and obviously the cream of the crop, which is Dublin. So look, Ryan O'Donoghue scored 1-4 yesterday. Their next highest, or on Saturday, their next two highest scorers were Jordan Flynn got 2 and Tommy Conroy got 2. Like, if we were to compare that to Dublin or even Kerry, Dublin would have a lot more boys in that forward division being an attacking threat. And unfortunately for Mayo, unless the game's chaotic, I feel they struggle a lot. Dublin, they're the masters of playing it whatever way you want. They can go toe to toe like they did last week against Mayo and find a way, or else they can set up defensively, suck you in, hit you on a counter. If a team wants to set up really defensively against them, they still have the players that can. They're measured in their attack. So I think Mayo are going to have to realise that teams aren't going to give them that chaotic nature, and unless they, as Dan says, changes their DNA, then I think they're always going to come up short, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm supposed to speak, Ledge, about teams setting up defensively against Dublin. Like, obviously this weekend, Galway played Dublin. The draw's been made this morning, and from a Galway perspective, Ledge, I've been very, very impressed with Galway. They haven't lost a game this year in the championship, and they find themselves in a quarter-final at Croke Park against Dublin, whereas Donegal have obviously lost a game, and they find themselves in a quarter-final with Louth, and the system does feel a wee bit lopsided as such, and even from a Roscommon perspective, like, Roscommon have lost 3 games, and are now find themselves in a quarter-final against Armagh. So I think Galway will probably feel a little bit hard done by, but that's the system that is, unfortunately, and I think maybe this year might be the last of this format, listening to Jarth Byrne's comments. But from Galway's perspective, Ledge, losing Shane Walsh is massive. Absolutely massive, particularly going in against Dublin. When you're going against Dublin, you need the stardust. You need your best players. That's it. You need your best players. But certainly, Ledge, from a physical point of view, from an organisational point of view, Galway seem to be there. And it'll be a difficult game for Dublin.
Yeah, is Walsh confirmed out for the weekend?
I don't know if he's confirmed out, but 1 week turn, like, I'm hearing it was a nip in the hamstring, like, so.
Right. Okay. Well, you're probably out the gap. So it's interesting. Like, I know Comer got minutes the last day. I think him playing is probably a bigger thing for Galway than Walsh playing. Interesting. Walsh, no doubt, like, top quality player, but I think that focal point for Galway what Ryan was saying a minute ago, can allow them to play in 2 different ways. So for a couple of reasons, it gives them a massive target for Gleeson to hit long kickouts, a really good target. That's not just Keane Darcy. All right. So Dublin then have to split the resources in that sense. I still think Dublin full back line there. I know it's kind of an old trope that's been thrown out an awful lot, but it's not that they're struggling, but they give you chances to play. I think they give you opportunities. Like, I'll put it this way: if Dublin go and play like they played against Mayo last week, I think they'll struggle because Galway will counter attack. They'll sit in and they will create problems if Dublin press really high. I think Dublin might go back to what we saw in final last year, where they'll mirror their opposition. And I think they'll play from the 65 back. I'd imagine anyway.
A bit of cat and mouse, Ledge. A bit of cat and mouse early. I think a lot of these games will be a bit of cat and mouse early.
I think so. I can't imagine Dublin being silly enough to think they're just going to blow Galway out of the water because, as you said, Galway are very well conditioned. They organisationally, they're excellent, and they have some proper footballers that can cause you damage. Like, I know we're going to talk about the Tailteann Cup later in bits and pieces, but inside forwards who are guaranteeing you first phase ball and a couple of scores a game. I mean, that is critical, and I think Galway have both of those. Again, it'll all depend on how much has been taken out of the legs from Galway. Like, the squad depth from Dublin is sick. Like, when you saw what they brought on after 45 minutes against Mayo, Mannion, Jack McCaffrey, like, I mean, it's insane. Like, and if I don't think they were overly exerting themselves up to this point. So I think kind of Dublin are really primed. I really like what Galway do, and I think if they were playing someone different, I think maybe there could have been something slightly. I think they could have taken another step, but I think with Dublin, with the weak turnaround, with possibly missing Walsh as well, I think that's going to be a bit of a slog for Galway,
Yeah, and just Ryan on that, like, we talk about Gleeson and goals for Galway. Like, Dublin are really, really probably the best in the business at sort of exposing any weak chinks in your armour, and they'll go after them, and they will certainly go after Gleeson's kick out. But as Led said, like rightly said, like, but Galway do have some serious options on kickouts. Like they've got, the likes of Tierney, they've got Conroy. Like Conroy put in a performance around there. You've probably come up against Paul Conroy in your career at some stage. Like for me, a real Rolls Royce of a footballer. I thought his performance at the weekend was outstanding. Now somebody did sort of say to me that they felt that Conroy in Croke Park wasn't as effective because maybe, the pitch plays a bit faster and it's not suitable for his age profile or whatever. But like he is a serious operator for Galway. Like.
Yeah, he's a class player, Stephen, and that probably moves on to the next point. I feel Galway and Croke Park are nearly like a different team because, yes, look, they can be very aggressive in their defensive shape, etc. But boy, when they get to Croke Park, they can kick, and they've got footballers throughout their pitch. Conroy from the middle there, if you give him ball, he'll look up and play lovely 40-yard kick passes all day. Now, that's my only concern. Conroy is a quality player, but he's 35. He's going to come up against Brian Fenton more likely than not. Fenton's, probably the best in the business. Galway have some lovely players up front as well. We talk about Mayo not having enough attacking threats. Like Rob Finnerty now seems to have stood up. He scored a lot of points at the weekend. Obviously McDaid has come back in. He's always an attacking threat as well with his pace and his power. Matthew Tierney kicked 2 points. So I feel Galway have the players. But if I'm being honest, Stephen, I just feel Dublin was the worst draw they could have got. And if Shane Walsh is missing, like he went off after 25 minutes, if he's missing, I just can't see Galway having enough to really challenge Dublin. I think they'll cause them trouble with their style and with the players that they have and the quality that they have. But I feel that high press as well that you talked about, I think Dublin will put the pressure on Gleeson at times, and I think they will have too much just to probably see themselves home by 3 or 4 points.
Yeah, and Ledge, like, I see Kieran Darcy, Shane Walsh, they both play their club football in Dublin as well. So Dublin will obviously be those two men. But up front, Daniel, like just looking at their team at the weekend, like Killian McDaid, obviously Walsh, Finnerty, Walsh probably won't make it. Comer coming off the bench, like Matthew Tierney, Paul Conroy, they do have a spread of scores, like, and at this stage of the competition, you can't be relying on that sort of one forward type thing. Like you need a spread of scores, like, and Galway do have that spread of scores. And at the weekend when Monaghan sat in deep and they had a really good organised defensive structure,
Lost you there, Stevie. We'll jump in, Ryan, while we're waiting for him to come back.
I
don't know if you remember. I was just going to say, Stevie, I don't know if you remember 2017 with Kevin Walsh. I think it was his last year or second last year when Dublin played they played Dublin in the semi-final and lost by 4. And they were probably overly criticised for how they played, which was probably the way everyone is playing at the moment. But they weren't a million miles away from Dublin that year, and I think that was probably undersold a little bit how close they got. And I just think the Galway's inside tools could possibly have enough to cause Dublin a little bit of problems if Dublin go and play that way. Like I can't imagine it though, Ryan. I'd say Galway or Dublin coming back and playing kind of mirroring up to what Galway do.
Yeah, I think this game might have been a wee bit too early for Galway. I think they need to be full tilt. They need to have Comer on, playing the last number of months. I think they needed Shane Walsh obviously flying fit. Killian McDaid, I know he played 60-odd minutes at the weekend, but he's still coming back. So if they would have got anybody else, then I would have given them a massive chance of getting through to the semi-final. But I don't think they have enough base in a lot of their players to really challenge Dublin. I think you need to be at the top of your game to beat Dublin in an All-Ireland quarter-final. Look, there's some lovely players, and I think it'll be a really good game. I think Galway will have a go, but I still feel that Dublin will have too much.
Yeah, and lads, Roscommon at the weekend. What a win for Roscommon at the weekend. Obviously the standout win of the weekend. We talked about Derry and Mayo being the standout game, but certainly the standout win was Roscommon. Massive win for Davy Burkledge. It was under a bit of pressure, obviously. Selector had left at the start of the year. A number of players had walked away, but at the weekend there, they were absolutely standing. Dara Craig, a young fella, obviously, who came through the under-21s. I didn't have Dara when he was there now, but you could see that group was coming through. There was a lot of talk about Dara. There was a lot of talk about Ben O'Carroll. There's a lot of talk about these young fellas. They've discovered a really good keeper as well. Young Carroll as well is a brilliant keeper. He probably put Colin Lavin under a bit of pressure, and that's probably what they needed as well. That sort of a keeper, the sweeper keeper. Hey, St. Bridget's getting an All-Ireland club final this year. Sugru, that some of those players coming through as well. But Ledge, it goes back to the old adage as well. Like, it doesn't matter how well you're set up, how good you are, you need good forwards. And like Damard Murrah, Dara Craig, Donny Smith, Enda Smith, like Roscommon have brilliant forwards. I see Shane Canan back in the panel as well. Shane was away travelling. Like, this is a tricky game for Armagh. But from the weekend, before we talk about Roscommon Armagh, at the weekend, Ledge, some of the scores that Roscommon got, it was pitiful, the Tyrone defending. It was actually horrendous.
Yeah, and I think this is the theme for the whole podcast today is how, let's say, 90% of the teams are play the way they're dictated to by their opposition. So, for example, if you are Roscommon, we know they can score. We know they'll hit you on the counter-attack and they're able to finish. If you give them those opportunities, they will take them. And by God, did Tyrone give them opportunities. Like the last score that Derek Craig got, Jesus, was pitiful. Like keeper with a one-bounce kick pass into the top of the D. That was a brilliant score. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like I thought Roscommon were excellent. Like you can only beat what's in front of you. But I thought Tyrone gave them the exact environment that they needed to prosper, and they absolutely did. Like, they took full advantage. They were really efficient in their shooting. Like they weren't wasteful in any capacity at all, and really aggressive defensively. The trick for Roscommon, and probably for, like, I'd say, an awful lot of other teams outside of probably there's not many other teams that can give it to you every way. Maybe Galway, maybe Dublin. I don't think even Kerry can do this. But what Roscommon need to do is Roscommon will need to be wary of Armagh, in the sense that they'll probably need to play that 13-14 behind the ball. If Armagh mirror that and play slow and steady and really get after them at kickouts, Roscommon could be in significant problems. If Armagh, which sometimes they can do, if they over game manage and they get a little bit stagnant and they give long periods of possession to Roscommon being comfortable defensively and then start kind of pot-shotting from distance, that'll give Roscommon oxygen. And as we said from the Tyrone game, you can see that, like, they will punish you on the counter attack. Like, I have to say, they've like this. It's not new either. Like we've been saying since the start of this podcast how consistent that Roscommon's forward play is. It's just when a team matches how they set up, they can't quite break that down. So it'll be, I think it'll be a brilliant game. But that's a massive win for Davy Burke and a massive win for Roscommon, because he's getting a nice little bit of flack probably from all sides, especially from you, Steve. You're always after him. But like in general, I think that's a huge win for Roscommon, and to go up to Tyrone, it's a massive win. Tyrone, again, I think disappointing. They fall into the Mayo bracket for me. I think they probably created a really good environment for Roscommon to thrive. And as you say, we said earlier, I think Tyrone need to go back to what they're good at, which is sorting out that defence.
Yeah, and Ryan, we'll talk about Tyrone in a second, but like from a common point of view, like I know from having worked with the lads, they're a great bunch of lads. Or a lot of them, are just looking at the team sheet here, probably 80-90% of them were there when I was there. Like, and probably the glass ceiling for that group, Ryan, is an All-Ireland semi-final. Obviously, deep down they're probably thinking, look at the draw. You could maybe squeeze through an All-Ireland final if everything went your way. I don't think they will. I don't think they have enough defensively, but certainly for them to get to an All-Ireland semi-final would be absolutely massive, for that group. And I know the likes of Enda and those boys and Donny and those boys who've been on the road a long time, like, it would mean so much to them. Like, Brian Stacks is good at defenders as out there. Brian, he's a brilliant footballer, St. Bridget's man. They've unearthed, obviously, Robbie Dolan this year from St. Bridget's. Fallon's playing at 6 as well, St. Bridget's club man. Ultan Horney's back in the middle of the field. I always said Ultan was a massive loss that year for us because he's the heartbeat of that team. He's a real fucking proper warrior, Ryan. I don't know if you've come up against Ultan in your time playing football, but a real proper, competitor. And that's sort of what Roscommon needed, that real dog of war, because they have the forwards. They've got a couple of really good defenders. They've now got Conor Carl in goals, who's as competent keepers. There's out there young, confident, cocky. Ben O'Carroll obviously is a massive miss for them, Ryan, from a forward point of view. But certainly Roscommon at the weekend, Ryan, were kicked some brilliant scores.
Oh yeah, look, I wouldn't underestimate Roscommon any day, Stephen. They're you've been there. They're a very proud footballing county. I know myself working down there. A lot of Roscommon people would come into me and, geez, how they take their football serious. Like, they'll have a big crowd up in Crow Park. Club football, I know if you guys are involved, they would say club football in Roscommon is very high standard. Now, obviously, Bridges got to the All-Ireland final and could have beat Glen that day. The thing about Roscommon is I feel they're not afraid to roll up the sleeves. They've a lot of boys that can go to war. And defensively, fair enough, they maybe need numbers back, but I'll tell you what, they'll suffocate Armagh's space. And the thing about them on the other side is, lads, they've about 4 or 5 players that you need to man mark. There's Connor Cox, there's Dara Craig, there's Donny Smith, there's Murta, then Enda Smith coming charging down the middle from maybe half forward midfield. Like, Armagh like to play like a zonal defensive shape, so they do. And if you give these boys a yard or two, like, they can get shots away. So it's a tricky game. Roscommon will take massive confidence from that result. Going down to Healy Park, regardless of where Tyrone is at, is a tough place to go. And I suppose the other side of it is they've already played an Ulster team, so why would they fear Armagh now? It's going to be similar styles getting stuck in your face. So the Rossies are they play a nice brand of football, and with that forward line, they'll give Armagh their fill of it up in Croker.
Yeah, no, historically, there's not much between the two teams, and obviously Armagh will be very wary of this challenge, but from Tyrone's point of view, lads, like, where do they go from here? Like, look, there's a lot of talk at the weekend there. Malachy O'Rourke, is touted as possibly a successor to the two boys. Like, I don't know if the two boys are still there or next year, or what the situation is with their arrangement with the county board or whatever. But certainly there does feel an element of staleness, lads, from when they won that All Ireland, that COVID All Ireland or whatever. That just feels a bit, I don't know. There just something's not right. Like, and you always talked about Tyrone needing that cause, and something to really say, but there just didn't seem to be any organisation. There seemed to be an element of frustration, playing sort of off the cuff. Like, and I know, chatting to a few coaches in Tyrone, that they would have said that the team is just more or less told to go out and play, and that doesn't cut it in the modern game, unfortunately, does it?
No. Like, I think whoever the next appointment is, and maybe it's be this year or next year, could be the year after. It probably doesn't matter in the short term. But 3-4 years down the road, I think Tyrone are going to explode. Like, I really do. I mean, you look at some of the youth that they have. Like, it mightn't have been the most successful since the COVID. It mightn't have been the most successful couple of years, but since the All Ireland. But like, here on Daly, even McElhone coming in there yesterday or Saturday. The Canavans, like, Sean O'Donnell, I think Tyrone are going to explode in maybe 3-4 years. I think they're going to have a really, really good side who are going to be back challenging. Like, I mean, who's the man for that job? Like, I was just, as you said it there, Malachy O'Rourke, I hadn't really thought about it, but like, imagine the job he could do with those lads, because he would give them shape, he would give them organisation, which will then blend in with the natural football they have. I think they could have the perfect mix of the two styles, with the right influences over them. Those lads probably need a couple of years to develop still, physically even. But when they do, I think they'll have. I think they're going to have an animal team. And look, I'd say they just probably need to grim and bear the next year or two. I don't know if there'll be a change. I don't know how much appetite there is in the county board for change. Like, would they be slow to get rid of Dewar, Logan? Like, given what both of those, what service both of those have given, I'm not sure. But I'd agree with you. It probably looks a little bit stale. And I don't think Tyrone can just, like, nobody can do it. Like, Kerry can't go out and just play randomly. You have to be set up. Like, you have to have an organisation. You have to have a little defensive edge. I think Tyrone have been missing that all year. They've had it in patches, but just not enough to suffice.
Yeah, and I suppose, lads, I'm really looking forward to this game this weekend, Armagh and Roscommon. Like, I'm actually just looking here, courtesy of GA League Tables and Twitter. Armagh, 19 years since they've been in an All-Ireland semi-final, Roscommon 33. So someone is going to be in their first semi-final in over 2 decades, which is brilliant, because you want to see fresh teams in the semi-final. I suppose, just looking at his list of teams he has here, another team there that hasn't been in the semi-final in a long time, Louth. Another really good performance. Led, you were called out on Twitter. Listen, look, Les, to be honest with you, right, if I was going to do a few bets for you, certainly wouldn't be doing it. You're the most measly bookmaker ever. You had Louth at even money and Cork at even money, and the bookies were given 5-2. So there's something wrong there, Les, with your pricing. But no, but you called it right from that perspective. There wasn't much between the teams. There wasn't much, on paper, on league form. Even Fitzmaurice last night, bit surprised at his comments. I'm surprised at the way Louth set up. I thought they would go and have a go at Cork, and you're going, That's exactly what Cork would have wanted. Cork would have wanted Louth to come out, go man to man, get pushed high up the field, and then use their athleticism and their pace. Because Cork, as you've seen, lads, on the highlights last night, they cut Louth open 4 or 5 times for goal opportunities. Just a few poor decisions, great save from the keeper. It could have been a different game. But if Louth had went out and went man to man, Cork's athleticism, is up there, lads, with the best in the country. So, Ryan, from Louth's point of view, Louth did exactly what they're meant to do. And like people in Louth, I know from speaking of people in Louth, I'm fortunate to be coaching with St. Martin's this year. Great bunch of lads. Craig Lennon's actually a club player there. Craig's younger brother Shane's another fine footballer. Good, like a really strong footballing county, very proud people. And you listen to the supporters on the periphery. They're delighted with the progress the team has made, especially after Mickey and Gavin left them sort of, what you would say, in the lurch, at the end of last year. But from a Louth perspective, Ryan, they've made some super progress this year.
Unbelievable, Stephen. Now, the thing about Eamon saying that, I think Louth had the perfect game plan. I talked last week about Cork and Mayo being very similar. They both play like a chaotic environment. They're very good if you give them space up and down because of unbelievable pace and power, especially from deep. And as it turns out, the 2 potential worst draws that they could have got was Derry, who set up really defensive, low block, and then obviously Louth. And it's funny, Derry and Louth are the 2 teams that have come through. So it didn't surprise me. I knew Louth would make it a real battleground. You have to give Louth massive credit, lads. They have came from Division 4 starting out a couple of years ago with Mickey Hart. Obviously then when Mickey stepped away, everyone was thinking, right, Louth could slip badly here. But it just shows you there's unbelievable leaders. Now, Ger Brennan, I've no doubt, has brought great people to the team as well. But there must be unbelievable leaders that they were able to maintain them standards. And I'm looking at Sam Leroy. I'm looking at, you mentioned your clubman Kieran Lennon. He was savage yesterday, Stephen. Tommy Durnion in the middle of the pitch has been a really good find for them. Plays at club football in Monaghan. So Louth are a tricky opponent. They hit from man. I'm just using this as an example. They can play a couple of different ways as well. They have a lovely brand of football where they can sit back nice and then see when they turn you over, their pace and power going. Even that last score that they got from the free, if you look at it on the highlights, the amount of runners they had from deep, going flat out, which just shows you the conditioning that they have throughout their team. So Donegal will sit defensively. I don't think they're going to change their style, but I'll tell you what, Louth will mirror that. So it'll be an interesting game, and I think Louth deserve massive credit. They definitely are a template for any of the so-called lesser teams down playing Division 3 or even Division 4, that if we stick together, get the structures in place, regardless of who's managing us, doesn't have to be a so-called top-class manager. Ger Brennan's only out in his career. We can go places. But the big thing is their conditioning, I felt, was massive. You could see that the players have bought into that and have kept the squad together.
Yeah, conditioning as well. Ledge, obviously, as Ryan talked about, they're a well-conditioned team. You can see that. But Kieran Sloan obviously does the S&C up there. He's a very well-respected S&C coach as well. But from a pace point of view as well, some of the pace they have on their team, Kieran Downey's a big loss for them. Newton Bluesman, he's out injured. But the likes of Kieran Keenan from RD, Craig Lennon, obviously St. Martin's, they have serious pace throughout their team. And then obviously add in the little bit of Stardust Ledge as well when you've got Samuel Roy, who can score from nowhere, who can do something out of nothing, who's very reliable on free kicks. They're well set up, and I suppose it shows as well, Ledge, for any coach setting out the likes of Meath, Kildare. Just have a plan. And there's Louth went into a Leinster final with a very specific game plan. Everyone knew their roles. Everyone knew what they were doing, and it was a goalkeeping, probably just one kick out that actually changed that game. That they would have taken Dublin right down the stretch, and who knows, what would have happened. But it just goes to show, Les, just have a fucking plan. When you're coaching, just have a plan.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's underestimated. I think it's really underestimated. And again, I'll go back to Fitzmaurice's comments about not Louth going out and having a go. This was a massive game for Louth. It's not long ago we played them in a Division 3 game and bet them by 4 points in 2019. This Louth team, that was the same group of players. That was the exact same group of players, but just with a different management. The Cork game was massive for them. I think we, and even I was listening to a stat about Derry's win over Mayo. I think it was the first in 2007, something outside of Ulster in the All Ireland series, something crazy like that. You forget sometimes how these progressive teams that we've had in the last year or two, they've progressed so far that we just expect them to be going and walking over these traditionally big teams. And look, Cork are traditionally a big team insofar as they've been consistently Division 2, Division 3. They've been up there. Derry and Louth both hit Division 4. Like, they hit rock bottom, and in fairness to Louth, I'd give them like one. I think they're one of those teams that can probably, maybe not at the top level, but I think they can play both ways. I think they can play, as we said, very controlled, very measured, and all the rest of it. If a team sets up low against them, but they can also go and hit you with that pace as well. And I think they have a nice balance. And another, just an individual I'd like to mention, Conor Grimes has been sensational this year. Like, he's had an unbelievable year. And I remember
Ryan Burns as well, Ledge.
Yeah.
You would have played against him. Ryan Burns, Hunterstown man, real good footballer.
Totally, like, and having really significant impacts this year. And look, I think against Donegal they'll struggle, because Donegal have just so much physical power and kickouts, and I think that's where Louth will struggle to get out, because against Dublin they relied so heavily on short that I think Donegal put a massive squeeze in them. But I tell you that they will be competitive. There's no doubt about it. And I think if Donegal didn't get caught by Cork, I think they might have had more of a little sniff, because as we could see, Donegal were susceptible. They'll push men high up the field as well, and if they're not clever at the ball.
Ledge, it's not as if, lads, Ryan, that Louth's got into Croke Park. Oh, she's got into Croke Park. Louth have probably played in Croke Park more in the last couple of years than Donegal have. They've been in 2 Leinster finals as well. Like, so, but it's an interesting one. I was actually playing golf yesterday afternoon with a Cork man, lovely man actually, and he was saying to me, he says, would you believe, and it was actually, the game was on when we were playing, like, and he actually said to me, he says, well, there you go, he says, the smallest county in Ireland has beaten the biggest county in Ireland, so it just goes to show you size, resources, it matters fuck all. When you've got a real good system in place, when you've got a group of players who are believing and buying into your system, anything can happen. Lads, before we move on quickly to the Tailteann Cup, I'm going to get to call these games. Armagh, Roscommon, Ryan.
Armagh.
Daniel.
Extra time, Armagh.
Well, I just said here, I just seen a great comment here from Damien McCullough. Actually, he says Armagh or Roscommon will definitely appear in an All-Ireland semi-final this year, depending on how long the penalties take. So I'm gonna go draw.
Yeah, don't be surprised. I'm
gonna go draw. Donegal, Louth, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll go Dublin, Donegal, and Kerry. That's my 3.
Ledge.
I would say Dublin, yes. I would say Donegal, yes. I'm going to say Derry. I think Kerry are going to hate playing against Derry with no prep.
I hope you're right. I would like to see Derry. I would like to see Derry win. I'd like to see Derry be in a semi-final, and obviously it'll be a very interesting few weeks ahead, lads. And it just seems to be very quick. Like, there's only 7 games left of the All Ireland series. Like, it seems to be very quick, lads. Tailteann Cup. Obviously, Ledge, you call it Laois to beat Antrim. I didn't call it. I call Antrim. You felt Laois would cause Antrim problems as well, Ryan. I watched the highlights, lads. It was very, very poor stuff. Very, very poor stuff. You could see the gulf in class, the gulf in quality. A lot of Laois's scores actually were Laois's goals were real sloppy goals. Like, that Antrim probably looking back on now will be disappointing. But certainly from Laois's point of view, Ledge, the likes of Evan O'Carroll, Paul Kingston still floating about. Didn't realise Paul was still playing. Laois have some good footballers, as we know. Good footballers. But I think from Antrim's perspective, they'll be very disappointed. What was your take on the game, Ledge?
Yeah, it's look, I've seen Antrim. We saw Antrim last year. Like, I think Antrim, like, in fairness to McEntee, he did the same in Meath. He gets extremely fit. He'll get you working hard. He'll get a bit of unity in the group, but as regards tactical nuance, I don't think so. Like, Laois had a bit of a setup. Like, they weren't, like, they were dropping back inside 60 meters and they were kind of hitting on the counter attack, and Antrim weren't fantastic at breaking that down. Like, they ran into a lot of blind alleys. Laois had a couple of traps, and Antrim had no real plan outside of when Laois turned the ball over high up the field. Yes, then Antrim were absolutely fine because they could kind of play off the cuff a small bit more. But even when Laois in the last 15 minutes, 10 minutes, Laois dropped off kickouts, like, Antrim running blindly into spaces, like, looked like they'd no major plan as such. And even they did a couple of shots from the hill when Laois were kicking out, and it was just really, Antrim's press was just really poor. Like, I mean, Laois are playing a spine, and all it took was just one runner just jogging out into space. Like, Antrim just looked disorganized from that end. And again, it comes back to, look, you need to have a very clear plan, and I think Laois had a clearer plan than Antrim. But I will say this, and as we said earlier, like a couple of scoring forwards goes a long way. Like, I mean, Mark Barry, I think, is a top class forward, good kick out option as well. And Evan O'Carroll, those two especially, like, they're probably guaranteeing you 6-7 points each a game. That's hitting the 13-14 point mark, and you tip in with a centre back getting 2 goals as well on top of that. Like, all of a sudden you're really competitive, you know. So it's fair play to Laois. It's a big turnaround from last year's debacle in the semi-final. And look, promotion, fantastic. They'll, you know, I'd say getting to the final might have been a little bit of surprise for them. So I think, look, all in all, as much as it's paying you to say it, they've had a really good year.
Oh no, listen here. Look, it doesn't really bother me anymore, to be honest with you. Like, but
No, way out of that, will you? Don Sugar is on your dartboard at home.
I've moved on those Laois hangovers by the use boys bottled it, like, you know. But hey, but Ryan, on a serious note, you know, obviously Down are in the final against Laois. Down put 8 goals past Laois last year. I would say Laois will have learned from that. But Down do possess blistering pace. Now, saying that, Ryan, like, I thought Down were extremely poor yesterday. I watched the game back. I taped it yesterday. I was out playing golf, but I watched it back yesterday evening. And, you know, just obviously from a supporter perspective, like, I was relieved that they got over the line. And it's obviously a day out for the kids and stuff and the young people in the county. It's great to go to Croke Park for a national final. But I think deep down, Sligo probably left this one behind. I think the injury to Oisín Savage, and I've worked with Oisín. He's a lovely child, great kid. He's only 21, and I really hope he's okay, because he took an awful blow. I think the last report I got last night was that he was still in hospital in Dublin. I think he's going in for surgery today. So wish Oisín all the very best there. Now it's an unfortunate injury, but when he hit the ground, Ryan, you could actually see he was in trouble. But that injury, in a strange way, actually probably helped Down, because there was a long period of delay. Sligo were 3 points up at that stage. That a man sent off, and then the 9 minutes of added time, Ryan, give Down that real, you know, incentive and hope that they would claw that lead back. And I suppose Down got away with one, Ryan, you know.
Yeah, I think so, Stephen. I actually thought, I hadn't seen much of Sligo, but I thought Down would have been, you know, too good for them. I thought Down would have been a lot more convincing. And to be honest with you, Sligo, 45 minutes gone the clock, you're saying Sligo looked like they could win this game. But I was watching it with the brother, and he was like, would you see, I think Down will show too much fitness going into the last quarter. But it didn't look like that. I felt Sligo were going to win that game until that unfortunate injury and then red card. And then once it went into extra time, you were saying, look, that's the game up. But again, Down couldn't put them away. And I think Laverty will be disappointed with that, because I think, you know, we've been looking at Down and the players that they've had, and Mina obviously coming in, and you're expecting Down to really probably blow everyone out of the water in that Tailteann Cup. So Laois obviously conceded 8 goals against them last year, as you mentioned, but McNulty's in charge this year. I feel Laois are a much better team under him. They went about their work quietly. They got promoted from Division 4. They won the league final against Leitrim. I felt in the Tailteann Cup they were pretty solid throughout the campaign. So I still think Down should have too much, but based on what I seen yesterday, I think Down still have a lot to do to blow everyone out of the water. You know, I don't know what it is, but they just seem to struggle for scores. It looked like Sligo had more natural forwards, Stephen, that they were able to, you know, get the ball.
Down have a lot of, as you know, Ryan, Down have a lot of similar players. You know, and I always think if you sit in deep, you match Down's pace, you know, it's a bit predictable, you know, and it is. Like, I know they tried to kick the ball a little bit more yesterday, and they were very, very reliant on Pat Haber, and Pat actually had a really good day yesterday. You know, he hasn't had a brilliant season to date, but he had a great day yesterday. He kicked some wonderful scores, and Pat's capable of that, you know. But Ledge, certainly from a standard point of view, like, it does show, and I know there was a bit of a call from Oisín McConville, you know, there should be 3 tiers in football. I think that eventually, you know, I don't know how. Like, the Tailteann Cup being played yesterday, 10,000 people in Croke Park. You look at the atmosphere in Inniskeen, lads. You look at the atmosphere in Inniskeen, packed house, the roar at the end. Like, it just felt as a proper championship match. Like, and them games yesterday just felt like they nearly, you know what they nearly felt like? You know, like those sort of minor games that are played in empty stadiums before the big game, only there was no big game on after it. And it just shows you the gulf. And I don't know how long, Ledge, they're going to play these games in Croke Park and live on TV. And I just feel like that the gulf is so clear to see, isn't it? Like, there really is. And I suppose the National League tells it. There's 4 tiers in football. Let's be honest. There's 4 tiers.
Like, if we're calling a spade, there's more than 4 tiers, because, like, and let's not make this about Division 3 and Division 4. There's a fucking gulf from the top 2 or 3 in Division 1 to the rest, and then there's a bigger gulf to the Kildares, to the Meads, to Corks, all those teams that are kind of in the next level. Like, there's a humongous divergence, and we're never going to level that off. That's ultimately it. And look, they'll say, let's say the Tailteann Cup is for development and all the rest of it. It's not. It's a competition for teams at their level to win. Like, I mean, and look, and I agree with you. I think that with the bit of kerfuffle over the hurling and all the rest of it. Now, in saying that, I thought the two Tailteann Cup games were more entertaining than the hurling, to be honest with you, because they weren't hectic either. But anyway, we won't anger the hurling fraternity. But it's look, I actually, to be fair, I thought Down and Sligo was a decent game. I will say Laois, I thought Laois and Antrim was, I thought standard was way down, but you'd expect that, like, that's not a surprise. Like Down just looked like, do you remember the first play Down had? Was it McGovern, the lad that plays soccer in Northern Ireland?
Yeah.
He won a ball, really good run, lovely pass down the line, was 1-on-1, and he overcarried. And it set kind of a standard. It strikes me like that Down think that they're too good to be here. We're going to blow teams away with goals straight away. Like, that just set a standard. If he chips that over the bar, that's a big win for Down, because they've set up defensively, they're organised, they transition, chip a score. Sligo are thinking, fuck me, that's a bad start to things. And he gets caught for steps because he tries to jink, trying to go for goal, trying to force it, and then all of a sudden, massive win for Sligo. Sligo get energy. Without the sending off, Sligo win. And I think, Ryan, you mentioned earlier, like, Sligo looked like they're more natural footballers. Like, Down sometimes look like they're soccer players playing football. And I know you're man to play in Northern Ireland, so there's an element to that. But Down only really got into flow when they had a spare man. Then they could trust that they could push up and kick out, and they had the ability then to get forward a small bit, and they kind of, I hate the phrase throw off the shackles, but they almost got confidence from having a spare man. They weren't winning that, I don't think, without it, to be perfectly frank, and that's a significant worry. So, look, maybe Down need to recognise that they're not better than this competition. This is their level, and you can't go out and, I'm not saying they took Sligo lightly, but in the first half, it looked like they were kind of, we can blow these lads away, and it probably took the second half, took the sending off, as you say, took a bit of reorganisation with that few minutes when Oisin Savage was getting taken care of, to kind of realise, oh, actually, bollocks, lads, we need to go back to brass tacks. And Laverty said it afterwards in his comments. He said that they obviously tried to kick a little bit more in the first half. They went back to brass tacks and ran the ball a bit more in the second half. And as you say, that is their game. And when a team sets up to match that, then it's kind of a bit predictable.
It's certainly a competition around that Down have taken seriously. You can see that they're taking it seriously. Like, but what Led said there from a development point of view, like, I don't see it from a development point of view. Like, they played Limerick, and they played Limerick in the league. They played Sligo in the league. They played Wicklow in the league. Just playing the same teams over and over again. Like, I don't know how that develops you. Like, for obviously to develop, obviously you need to get into Sam Maguire, and I suppose that's the one plus point, is that this is a pathway into the Sam Maguire. But it just doesn't feel the same. Like, I know last year there was a big breakfast morning stuff in the lead up to the final. I'm not like the two girls will go to the final. They'll want to go down to it. They'll go down to it or whatever. I'll take them down to it. But it just doesn't seem to be like, there was a Meath in the final last year. I'm not being disrespectful to Laois. Like, there was a significant win in Breffni Park away to Cavan. It felt like, there's a bit of substance behind that. But it just feels, Ryan, this year that a lot of teams really just didn't really care about the competition. I don't know, from a Fermanagh perspective, like, I'm sure they, what was the feeling in Fermanagh, like?
To be honest, Stephen, we were sitting watching the game yesterday, and we were saying, we would love to be there. Now, I know that Down are obviously they've great tradition and proud footballing county, but I do feel for the Down players, it's massive that they get this win next week.
It is.
For the Down supporters, I'm not too sure if you're going to get overly excited about a Down v Laois final in Croke Park. I think Down people probably see themselves, that they're in the All Ireland. That's where they belong. But Down have had a couple of games now in Croke Park, and we have still yet to see them, apart from maybe that Laois game last year where they scored 8 goals. We've still yet to see them really fire. Like, they lost to Westmeath this year in the Division 3 league final as well. So there's a wee bit of pressure on them. And I think yesterday that's where I was expecting. I was right. Sligo here, they're going to go out and they're just going to blitz them. But it didn't happen. And I think that will still be in the back of the Down players' minds that, Laois set up and they're able to match their pace and power, that transition that Down have through that middle third. They don't get caught on turnovers high up the pitch. Then I think Laois will give them their fill of it, because Laois, as Dan mentioned there, they've got players up top that can score and they can kick the ball. So Laois don't have to commit everybody forward all the time and play into Down's hands. If they can look up and play nice 30, 35-yard kick passes into the likes of Evan O'Carroll, Mark Barry and these boys, then I think Laois under McNulty will give them a nice test. But definitely, it doesn't probably excite me massively a Down v Tailteann Cup final.
And it's 3 weeks away as well. It's played in the same weekend as the All-Ireland semi-finals, and you sort of feel as if the All-Ireland semi-finals are going to sort of overwhelm, the build up to the semi-finals are going to overwhelm the final. Ledge, will not ask you to price the games up this weekend, but certainly next Monday we'll go back and look at you.
I'd have made someone money this week. I said a Derry Loud double. I said
St. Ledger's SP, but hey, we'll chat next Monday, lads, and we have a big weekend of football ahead. So, lads, thanks again. Thank you.
Cheers, boys.